everyone. I'm delighted to be the moderator of the first and only panel of this event, which is, and the topic is the role of innovation in distance learning. I'm happy to welcome three panelists, Kristýna Kosatíková, Matt Majtan, and Jakub Stránsky. I will go through each and every one of them and introduce them briefly, and then ask them to introduce themselves and to briefly describe what they do and how it helps, why it is important and innovative. And then we go through 3-4 main questions we would like to talk about this afternoon. So ladies first, so I would like to welcome and thank Kristýna Kosatíková to be part of this panel. Hello, Kristýna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lucia.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. And I'm happy to be here with you.
Lovely, lovely. You are leading IBM corporate social responsibility in Central and Eastern Europe, which is a quite interesting job and exciting, I think. Would you introduce yourself better, and would you describe the platform IBM operates, which is PTech and Open PTech, please?
Of course, thank you. Yes, I will do that. As you mentioned, I'm leading IBM CSR in the CEE region, but in the past I have also other working experiences, and I would mention that I was leading international NGO, which was representing our region in United Nations during the UN Women preparation phase. So I have experiences with non-profit and public sector as well, and that's why I think public-private cooperations are important, and I'm happy to be here with you. In IBM, corporate social responsibility considers education as priority, so that's why I'm cooperating with you and other partners. And more than a decade ago, the data started to show globally an important fact that numbers of unemployed people was growing, and at the same time, number of jobs that applicants did not have the skills for was also growing. And it's also very important that some groups are not excluded from the digitalization. So that's why IBM developed the two programs you already mentioned, the two CSR programs, which is PTech and Open PTech. PTech is a new content we are bringing with important private and public partners into secondary school curriculum. So PTech happens at schools. Now, of course, online. Globally, we have 266 schools in 27 countries, and in EU, it's 28 schools in 7 countries, in CEE, 9 schools in 2 countries, in Poland and Czech Republic. Open PTech is online platform with hundreds of courses, and it's free for everyone, so everyone can participate in this one. And there are also specific courses and features for teachers on Open PTech, but it can also be used for reskilling, upskilling, or lifelong learning. And it is built based on long-term experiences of IBM with not external, but internal education. And courses are also certified. You can finish it with badge, which shows to employers and universities they take it already into consideration during interviews for jobs or further studies. And we are also translating selected courses into local languages. Of course, all courses are in English, but we have also content in French, Spanish, Italian, Czech, and Polish. And the content is aimed on topics like artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, which was mentioned by Brandon before as an important area, data analysis, but also we are covering very important area for our region, I think, which are professional skills like team cooperation, presentation skills, critical thinking, time management, project management, and others. And you can find their videos or test quizzes, so it's quite lively content, not just text. Globally, during 1 year of OpenPTech existence, we have 300,000 registrations in 141 countries. And from this number, 97,000 are active users who spend there during the year 510,000 hours. For your comparison, in EU, it's 25,000 registrations, and in CEE, it's 2,000 active users. And we have positive feedback from students, but from my perspective, the cooperation with schools and teachers is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you. It was exhausting and very, very illustrative. The platform is quite big, and I hope it will grow in the future more. And that's why we cooperate on the platform of DigiKoalice, which I'm grateful for. Thank you very much, Kristina. And I would like to welcome Maitan. Hello. Mate, you are a CEO of Cogito, which is an education startup based in Hungary. Would you like to introduce yourself even better and describe what Cogito is? I understand what I found on your website, that it is a virtual space for students to organize their thoughts and notes and to help them to study together. Is it correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm happy to join you on the panel. Yes, as you mentioned, we're a virtual space. We were initially starting out as a platform for students to organize their notes, because one of the things that we saw due to digitalization was that nowadays I don't really think that the access to information is the necessary problem, but it's rather filtering that information. So just as if you go on social media and you see how much noise there is, you open a browser, you start searching, and you see almost every information is out there, but your problem is not being able to choose whichever to just go with. So just as if you have, I don't know, 10, 20 design thinking courses, you might not be sure which one is the best. Obviously, you can take the reviews and see what's working best for a type of students, but you can be sure that that's really what you need for, especially in tertiary education, where the universities set very different expectations for the students to take on tests and exams. And therefore, we wanted to do a university-specific database where the students can self-organize every information regarding their studies for every topic, every course they have. They could have collaboratively create these notes and also invite their teachers to help them collaborate on that, meaning that the students would do the majority of the work by creating the notes, but the teachers would validate them and therefore keep an up-to-date and version-controlled database of the study materials. And then last March, we had to pivot because due to the large market distortion that was caused by COVID, we weren't able to proceed as fast to the market, and we're actually quite late to the market due to this acceleration. So we pivoted into a B2G model, since we had a great understanding of tertiary education here in Hungary and especially in the Central European region. We're now working with the National Research Development and Innovation Office here in Hungary. And we've been able to develop a course on entrepreneurship called the Hungarian Startup University Program, which is helping students to gain new digital skills and skills especially related to entrepreneurship, how to start businesses, how to market them, and how to understand the customers as well. So the whole journey for a new startup or a new innovative firm. And now it's in more than 21 universities here in Hungary, and over 2,100 students are using the course to study about innovative corporations. And our experiences have been immense. We're about to expand it not only here in Hungary, but in the Carpathian Basin, starting with Hungarian students, but also we would it could be franchise, or it could be in a box product model. And therefore, what we see, or what we have saw, that the market was driving the classic model to a more user journey based model, where you actively have to think in digital education on how the user is interacting with the material. So you had to rethink how the user is going to school, is in school, and is doing homework or after school work. And what we did was start from a need-based level. So we saw, okay, what is the university for? We saw that, okay, it's for the workplace to be able to integrate and have useful skill sets. So actually our course starts with, so you are able to define your personality as if you were working in a team. So we can decide who is going to be a CEO, a CTO, a designer, or a product manager. And therefore we can sort people into different groups. And as they go through this user journey, through learning entrepreneurship, they can see how they will fit and integrate into teams. And therefore we give them a clear picture. And I think this was one of the key takeaways from our digital journey so far, to be able to show people a clear picture of where they are going to arrive once their courses end and once their digital education stops at the end of the day.
Lovely, lovely. And what I liked is that how you had to rethink the whole business model you have during or due to the pandemic. We will talk about it later because it relates to the first question I have prepared for you. But for now, thank you very much, Mate. And I would like to welcome also Jakub Stransky. Hello, Jakub.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us. You are a founder and CEO of Czech company. I'm not saying intentionally startup because I perceive it more as a company now, setup company, Tech Ambition, which is a Czech company, and it helps teachers to use new methods in their classrooms using new technologies such as AI, etc. Would you like to describe it better? And would you like to introduce yourself? What was your journey, and what exactly Tech Ambition does for students and for teachers?
Yes, please. Thanks. Well, Tech Ambition started 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, and the goal was to help math teachers to engage students more for mathematics or for STEM, for science. And for quite a long time, we wasn't able to succeed. What we do now is we are trying to use AI to help teachers to incorporate methods like cooperative learning, peer instruction, or flipped classroom, because it kind of worked the best out of what we try. And that means that if there is enough of cooperative activities in the classes, then the individual activities of students increases dramatically. In some of the papers that were published about Tech Ambition and its influence on the teaching, it's almost doubled activity of individual students. So that was the desired result. So we are trying to help teachers to incorporate those cooperative activities in pretty much any lesson. We are kind of creating recommendations in the real time that tells teachers what is the right topic for students to discuss and what would be the efficient group compositions for the discussion. And in order to do that, we need to have a lot of real-time data, right? In order to create those recommendations. So we have also created a vast amount of content, interactive online content that students work with when they are studying mathematics. They work with the content for their self-study or even for their group works, and we get a lot of data, and we evaluate the data and prepare detailed recommendation for teacher to help them organize those cooperative activities during the lessons. And all was designed for the present learning, for the learning in the schools. Now with the distant learning, we have to change not the approach, but the environment. So right now we are launching the environment that allows students to cooperate efficiently on math examples in the real time, whether they have old mobile phone or great computer, or whether they are at home or on the walk. So the principle is still the same. We are trying to help teachers make as many students to cooperate, work together, argue together, as many students as possible. But we are kind of pushing it to the online and make it as seamless, as effortless as possible.
Thanks a lot. Very, very interesting story, and I'm a huge fan of you. Would you present us with some numbers? How many schools are you in, and how many maybe teachers, students do you do your product use?
Yes. So in the peak, in the very peak, it was 400 teachers and 60,000 students. High school teachers and high school students from the Czech Republic, and a couple of teachers and a couple of students from Slovakia. So those are the numbers, and those are the recent numbers. And for this school year, I do not expect them to grow. However, for the next school year, we are moving also to the basic schools. So we hope for a bit more next school year.
Lovely, thank you very much. So this was the introduction of the panel. Thank you all for your words and your description of your work. I'm very happy to be part of this and to hear your stories. My first question is related to the pandemic. As we know, it's a tragedy, it's a horrible situation we're in, but we also ought to focus on positive sides, because if not, we would go mad. So would you tell me, how did the pandemic positively influence your company? Have you come up with any innovative approach, any innovation, and any new stuff during the pandemic? I've heard, for example, Matt, that you had to completely change your business model. Would you describe it even further? How the pandemic helped you to think outside the box?
Yeah, so it had many positive effects, and actually one of them was the pressure of having to innovate from all players in the educational ecosystem. So one was obviously the government office, who realized that taking things into the digital world was a necessity. So the things that used to be nice to have had become a must-have in a very short period of time. And I think that urge to innovate and change things had really played out well. And for us, what really made the difference was thinking in how we can integrate into education not only the students, the teachers, and the institutes themselves, but how we can think in a larger ecosystem, and how we can find the corporates such as IBM, for example, and many others, and how we can see the whole, actually I'm going to say it, user journey of a student, so of a person. So I think what's really, really important to see here is how we can shape an entire future from primary school now in the digital world up until the point of post-graduation, and how we can at different levels start to develop skills through digital tools that actually help them in those phases. So for example, university student, besides studying for their exams, really need to start developing the skills Christina talked about. And we actually found that by developing a course and developing a user journey that was able to cover this entire development for the students, was very fast to integrate into larger corporate structures as well. So if we can give a future to the students enrolled in digital courses, then I think it's going to be more efficient, because I think obviously corporates are going to be one of the most...
Jo. No, já jsem totiž současně ještě na...
Yeah, so...
Sorry about that.
No problem, it happens. So I think one of that was finding how we can give a value proposition that is valid for not only the government office, but also the students, and through that, the corporates who are the end beneficiaries of the students coming out of the universities. So I think for us, thinking in this larger ecosystem and being able to find an integrative solution that really gave us the upper hand and the advantage when it came to making a new product.
Yeah. Thank you. And also you were ready for it, you know, you were ready to engage in the new ways, and maybe you found new partners such as the Office of Government. And from the authority point of view, as I'm from the Ministry of Education, it really also, the pandemic also showed us how many partners we might have. And before the pandemic, we didn't even think about it. So I think it's great that this crisis showed you like more friends around you, and to looking for other friends and partners to cooperate with. So thank you for your experience. Jakub, you had a kind of different story. You said that the ratio or the idea of your company remained the same during the pandemic, but you had to look for new forms. Would you elaborate on that? How exactly did you have to adapt, and what was the innovation in your company?
Well, I believe that from some point of view, it's just the UX, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is that teaching, the distant teaching or learning, if you will, is somewhat more synchronous that standard way of teaching is, and that kind of opens a possibility to have collaborate students from different classrooms, from different schools, or perhaps from different regions. And I strongly believe that education is a very social process, and it should be, especially for young people. And the people you kind of study with, not only the teachers, but also fellow students, will influence your future self very much, I believe. And we see a huge opportunity to kind of connect students from, let me say, more problematic regions with the very best students in the country to kind of collaborate or something together. And I really believe that such a kind of collaboration could inspire students from all around the country, perhaps all around the world in the future, to have different approach for their studying, for learning, for school in general. And so I believe this is the huge opportunity that we are trying to aim for, to not only have cooperate or collaborate or argue students in one class, but also younger students with older, more experience, if you will, and the students with completely different backgrounds, but talented students with the students from best schools in the country. If you have all the students in the school, you are rarely able to do something like that. If you have all the students out of the school, that is a huge opportunity. So we are aiming for this, to connect the students from different classes, from different schools. It's going rather slowly, because you need to have teachers on your side, you need to have students on your side. They have to be willing to talk to someone they do not know, which is not always, pleasant. But it's, I would say, almost always is beneficial, at least for one side, at least. So that is the innovation, or that is the opportunity we see in distant learning or in current situation, and that is what we are trying to achieve, to have cooperate students from different regions, let's say.
Well, I really like that, because it made you to think even bigger, let's say.
Yes, sure.
Not only focus on the classroom, but on the whole republic, let's say. And what I really like is the connection with the less fortunate students, with the average ones, which in the Czech Republic is a great problem. I'm sure you know that we have a really strong correlation within the social economic status and performance. So it's great that this product really helps to overcome these social economic background.
Agreed.
So thank you very much for that. Yeah.
I would just do one small correction. We hope that it will help, It's not happening in that wide range yet. We are trying to do something about it. We are just starting with this functionality that is able to connect students really quickly and have them collaborate even online in some.
Yeah, I'm more optimistic about it because I'm so thrilled to hear about it, to listen to that someone has this idea to really connect the less fortunate and the average fortunate. So I'm fingers crossed to you that you will manage to connect these students. Thank you for that insight, and I kept Christina for last as the last regarding the innovation, as IBM is a big firm, big company, and it might seem that it's quite slow maybe. So, but it would see from the outside. But how is it in reality? Have you introduced an innovative approach in your company or in your department during the pandemic?
Well, I would not say that IBM is slow, but you are right that as the global IT company, we were used and equipped to work online. So it wasn't such a big deal for us. But of course, we came with Open PTech within CSR, which was in the beginning of this pandemic situation. And I think it influenced it, because we really enabled all people to use it as CSR tool. And I would say that for many of our partners, schools included, it was a big shift. So we were trying to support them in different ways. And I think this was quite innovative. And I can give you a few concrete examples maybe later.
Yeah, and this for me is a bridge to my second question. So I will stick with you for the second question. If you have some examples, and would you like to share with us an examples of innovative approach in your environment related to distance learning, of course?
Yeah, in the very beginning, when the situation was very difficult, I would say for schools who are our partners in education, especially the high schools, secondary schools, we started to support Cisco WebEx project, where Cisco was giving free licenses to schools. And we have quite a big volunteer program here in Czech Republic as well, but globally. And through whole Europe, we were supporting schools with guidance, how to use this tool and how to do the online learning. We even prepared some methodology for teachers and so on within this project. Then, of course, during later on, when we were preparing for this school year, in PTech schools, we of course anticipated this situation, which is now happening, and we prepared for online alternative. So in August, we were training the teachers for the new content. We distributed the teaching aids in September, like Arduino kits. So the kids were using them at home during the school year. And also, we secured some interesting online guest speakers, even from abroad, which would not be probably possible on, if it would not be possible online. And we prepared activities like online contests for students, and they learned how to use different communication tools like Discord or WebEx, which they would probably not do if this situation did not appear. And we were also supporting what just now Jakub mentioned, some exchanges of ideas and experiences between students from different PTech schools. For example, recently the students from older year were motivating the younger ones to join the program, and it was online. There were approximately 500 students from those 5 schools in Vysočina region in Czech Republic. And also they had some exchanges during the year with South Korea students. And I think even of this situation, in spite of this situation, the outcomes were really great because we have independent evaluation methodology, and we are constantly, it's constantly confirming that students improved, especially in soft skills and in motivation. It proved that PTech program brings motivation, and not only to students, but also to teachers. And last but not least, I would like to mention this course we prepared in cooperation with you, Practical Recommendation for Online Learning, which can be found by teachers on OpenPTech.
Great, thank you. This really sounds amazing that the online focus helps us to connect people that would otherwise not be connected. So I think that's great, and that you seized the opportunities to really help work with your platform. And I found interesting what you said about motivations, because what I've heard is that motivation during this horrible year is the most difficult thing for everyone, you know. So thank you for that. And maybe Jakub, would you like to share with us some examples in your environment, some innovative approaches in schools you know?
I don't think it will be that exciting, but from what I have seen, I really liked how sometimes students cooperated with teachers on setting up the lessons. And I mean, so far for the cooperative learning, you needed some software like Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or something, or Zoom, something like that. And not all of the teachers were really experienced with creating conference calls and such a kind of things. But what we saw very often was students helping teacher to use Discord, which is a platform for streamers that are streaming games. I believe that I'm explaining correctly. A bit older, but it was really awesome to see how students help teachers, and I believe it was for the first time ever, but students help teachers that much to create great learning experience for them. And so they were cooperating in many subjects, with or without tech ambition, through the Discord, in the program that the teacher never heard of before, I guess. So that was very nice to see. And from our numbers, we just see more teachers trying cooperative learning, and that's because of what you have already mentioned, that the motivation is really low these days. It's getting harder and harder to motivate students, and I believe it's also harder and harder for teachers to motivate themselves. So more teachers are trying cooperative learning, that's for sure, and more students are helping teachers to create a good learning experience, and I believe that's great. So yes. That's for us.
Yes, thank you for that insight. Mate, what about in Hungary and regarding university education? Do you have any good example?
Well, I do. Before COVID, it was a very difficult time to be an edtech startup, I think, in the CEE, because most of the innovative approaches that we came up with were always met with skepticism, because on one hand, it was always considered, that's too innovative, the market isn't there, and you won't be able to sell it because people don't understand it. And on the other hand, if you try to cut down from the innovative approach and focus on the missing parts in education, people were like, okay, but that's already existing on the market, and what's new about your product? So it was really just a back and forth between how innovative you can be and how much value you can actually provide. And what we saw was, just as Jakub mentioned, COVID had kind of made this hypocrisy disappear, meaning that we had to deal with the stuff that we didn't even know we didn't know. So we had to realize that teachers at some point will have trouble with using Zoom, will have to set up digital skills and digital tools, and the market, and especially investors, were very far ahead, and they were thinking that if you're not presenting some tool that you put on your head and you learn everything, then your business approach is basically non-existing, or it's not good enough. So the market realized that it was actually on a lower level digitalized than it actually was thought by investors and the business. And so the market oriented towards fixing those gaps and holes in the system. And then it gave us a lot of new opportunities. For example, there is a Hungarian company now, they're based in the UK. What they're doing is, their name is Binder, and they are connecting students to on mute study together in virtual classrooms. So just like you're sitting in a library, you're doing it online. And there is a need from students. There are YouTube channels where people stream how they're studying and people can join in. And that's something, I don't know, 5 years ago would have been completely misunderstood, and people would have known what to do with it. And now it's completely normal. So I think any new innovation that is going to drive us, especially towards intimacy in the digital world, that is going to be the new kind of innovation I'm looking for. And I think that now we have the opportunities to just really capitalize on that.
Well, yeah, thank you for that example. It's really interesting, and that really you're right that 2 years ago it would be like, what? It's like it wouldn't be accepted at all. So thanks for that. It's really I didn't know about it. We have time for some questions from the audience. So I would like to invite our public or audience to ask any questions they have on mind in the chat, and I will pose them to our panelists. In the meantime, I have the third topic, or maybe I have a really nice question. Do you think the changes from the pandemic will be long-lasting? Really interesting questions. Maybe I can ask Christina from the company point of view.
Yeah, I believe so. Maybe not all of them, but I believe that many of them will last. And because the schools are now used to online learning, I'm sure they will use it further on. And for me, it means, for example, I mentioned those interesting speakers we were inviting into PTech school. I think this can continue easily. Of course, it's always better when people can discuss and present face to face, but I'm sure a lot of these experiences will last. And I think it's a positive situation.
Well, I hope so too. It's really difficult to have a full day of meetings, face-to-face meetings, when you have to count with an extra half an hour to move from one room to another. Meanwhile, online, you just click on the different button. Thank you for that. Matt or Jakub, do you have any idea on these questions? Would you like to add something? Or do you think Christina mentioned it?
Well, I think I agree completely. I think there is one catch or one thing that could be negative also. So I think what's good is that the market is currently customer driven, meaning that the universities and even primary school and secondary schools will need to rethink their services. So I think what's going to be huge is for universities and secondary schools trying to think in how they are actually a product that people buy or buy into, even if it's government funded. We have to start thinking about that, because we saw it with Harvard that many students, for example, due to the COVID, Harvard went into full online mode, but they still charged $50,000 for a semester. And you can see the discrepancy between the online service they provided versus the on-site services. So I think the customer-driven needs will transform long-term and will create an innovative bubble for the universities, and that's going to create a bigger competition. It's going to be good for the students, but it's going to be disadvantage for those universities or schools that are already behind. So that is kind of the negative of it as well, that there will be a lot of lagging service providers, schools in this case, who won't be able to have that service, and they won't have the teachers, they won't have the digital skills and tools to maintain their quality of education.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. It's what we see here, that the we see more and more, the scissors are opening more and more, and the gap is really widening regarding schools, regarding teachers, regarding students, and it's something we need to focus on in the future. And I think maybe these questions might be connected with that. Research is strongly showing that teachers want to go back to the physical classroom. I totally agree, it's true, and I don't think anyone would doubt that. Many are talking of Zoom and or digital fatigue. I would totally agree. Should we start thinking that this optimism can be counterproductive and harmful to online learning? Do any one of you want to respond to that? Do you think that this optimism regarding digital technologies connected with digital fatigue that we all experience can be counterproductive, or how do you perceive this question?
I would like to say something, if I can. I really believe that teachers worked very hard. The majority of teachers worked very hard before, and now they work even harder. It's very, very problematic to kind of do the proper online teaching for the same amount of students as they did in person. I believe that's not possible, simply, not for the long time. I do not see the current situation as an idle state. I see it as a crisis where a lot of teachers are getting seriously exhausted, and they are even thinking to change their field. So I don't know. I believe that for the wide digitization of the teaching process, let's say, or the schools, we need, much more than the teacher's effort. And
sorry for that.
And I really believe that there will be a lot of good or examples of the good practice. But I don't see, successful digitization at schools where teachers are enjoying teaching and let's say teaching is more individual and stuff like that. All the benefits from distant teaching, unless the teachers are extremely exhausted and they are working, much more than is healthy. So I have a lot of concerns, and I believe that there will be very, very many examples of the good practice, but also the majority of the teachers will not keep their habits from the distance learning. That would be my guess.
Well, we'll see. What's for sure, thank you for your insight. I agree with that, and what's for sure that even the really great teachers, they are sharing their experience with others. We say, like, education influencers are just tired of the situation. They really hate it. So everyone is looking forward to real personal face-to-face classrooms. So, and we hope that it will come as soon as possible. So thank you for that question and for your answer, Jakub. We have time for last topic I would like to open, and it's the connection with Digital Coalition, National Coalition for Digital Skills and Jobs in the Czech Republic, DigiKoalice. I would like to ask every one of you, where do you see its role regarding innovations, how to incentivize them, enhance them, and then spread them? Where do you see its role and its focus? Who can start first? Maybe Matt. Would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that's an excellent remark. I think that's a solution, or that should be the way to lead it. So it's obviously the corporates that need to be integrated into this system, and they need to sort of set some sort of market expectations from the universities or from the schools to where they need to position the students. And this requires a huge flexibility of the schools as well, because if the traditional models of education won't be able to reflect the market needs, I think that we are going to see more lagging regions in Europe that won't be able to serve that highly educated individuals, or those highly educated individuals who will be able to join the Western markets, for example, or the more free markets, or the markets with more purchasing power. And I think for that to have a coalition that is supporting that, I think that's the only way that can go. And just one quick answer for Jakub, or the way I see it, I completely understand that the teachers have had enough from the Zoom and the online teaching. But the problem is that there is a new generation of influencers or content creators growing up, and they are in my age or a bit younger even, who are finding new platforms to educate people on whatever thing they think is important. So I think the role of teachers is highly should be flexible now. So in 20 years, I think the current model of how we teach people is going to be, I'm not saying obsolete because I'm thinking that's too fast, but I'm saying that universities will be able to hire content creators, will be able to teach classes in 5 to 10 minute short videos. And that's going to be the new standard, because the corporates are going to set the expectations, and they will say, okay, this content creator is creating content for us. He's talking about design or product development or marketing skills and anything basically. And the students will be a lot more adherent toward that content that they see in the classroom. So we're going to see a discrepancy between the corporate needs and the needs of the teachers. So the teachers will need to adapt very quickly for that, because otherwise I'm not really seeing how in 20 years they will be able to keep up with the pace.
Thanks a lot for that insight. It's true that the times are moving very fast, and education is kind of rigid as we see it, and the pandemic really accelerated digital skills of teachers and students and parents. So if I would sum up, you think it would be even more accelerated, more dynamic, and then the platform, the digital coalition, could be like a connecting part between the market, which is very fast, and the schools and education system, which is kind of rigid. Do you feel that's what I understand from your speech?
Yes, this is exactly why the framework is necessary, and it's necessary to nail it on the first try, pretty much, because I don't see we have too many tries.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, very, very interesting insights. Maybe Christina, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Matt just said. I think our education system, especially in CEE region, is very, very old-fashioned and it's not working anymore in this world. And students don't learn the skills they need in the labor market, but they also don't need, now I'm talking about secondary school students, for example, because some of them finish with their secondary school education and they even don't gain the skills they need for their life or the labor market or even their future university studies. And but yeah, so I agree with Matt completely. And from my perspective, where Digital Coalition can play a big role, I think is also share good practices that work, connect different partners, support the cooperation between different sectors and between stakeholders in education, which I suppose all the coalitions are trying to do.
Yeah, thank you for that, and we hope we are at least on the path towards this aim, or towards this this role you described, I hope. Jakub, what do you think? What do you think of DigiKoalice and its role in the future?
Mm-hmm. I will just say that I love what I've heard now, to improve the educational system and learn more skills and new things in the school. And that would be great. And sooner or later that will happen, of course. But what I was trying to point in that if I make it really easy, I don't believe that in Czech Republic we have enough teachers to do that. You need just more. And if you want to keep teaching / learning a social process, and have some, you know, space for each kid to personally communicate with a teacher, I believe that's pretty much important in the not only in teaching process, but in, you know, growing in general. That you need more teachers. I generally believe that a digitized teaching/learning that keeps social attributes of, you know, traditional learning needs much bigger budgets than the traditional one. So, and at least in my country, there will be a problem. And so I wish you the best of luck in kind of being an ambassador of you know, digital technologies and explaining to all the necessary part of the chains that it all starts with the teachers and it ends with the teachers. And you need a lot of great teachers, much more than we have for the traditional way of teaching. So for me, that would be probably the most important thing that anyone who is, you know, supportive of digitization and innovation teaching and learning process should do, to kind of explain and prove, or prove me wrong or prove me right, but prove any of that for the digital teaching where the social aspect is kept, you need more labor force than for traditional one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I never thought about it, to be honest, about like the number of teachers you need in comparison for the digitalized teaching and for non-digitalized teaching. I never thought about it. Thank you for that insight. And yeah, it's true that in the Czech Republic, the shortage of teachers is really great. And so, but this is a topic for the whole government that is going to come after elections. And the role of the coalition I see in its advocacy to pointing out that really the digital education is important and it really requires budget and focus. So thank you, Jakub, for that insight. And I've heard that we have some more minutes. So if you let me, I will pose another question from Giptis. Do you think e-learning services and infrastructure for schools should be left for free market or should be centrally funded by the government? How to find the balance here? Well, I think it's an excellent question because we have three representatives of the market here. We'll see what they are going to say to us. So Jakub, I have you on the big screen, so I will ask you, free market or government?
I don't know. That's a very, very difficult question. Depends on the, you know, society and a lot of stuff. But I will just add some data. We have, I believe, 4 regions in the Czech Republic that are supporting schools in purchasing the commission license. And in those regions, between 35 and 50% of high schools work with the commission. And in other regions, and I mean actively works, that they really use it. And in other regions, it's like, you know, 5 to 10%. So that difference is huge. It's massive. At the same time, we always keep the same model. So that means that each school can choose whether they want to use it and then they get money for it, or whether they do not want to use it and they simply do not get the money, of course. So I believe it's something in the middle. You know, the choice is upon the teachers. And I believe it's a rather good thing, because then you kind of prevent of purchasing or paying for something the teacher doesn't use. So the choice is on the teachers, but the budget is there from let's say the government or the region or whatever the solution is. But money are there, and the teacher chooses. I believe that works quite well.
I think you described it quite well, and in a lot of regions, like you said, it really works well. I think in Hradec Králové, if I'm not mistaken, it's really quite great cooperation, and and the regional authorities very active there. So I'm really thrilled to see their work.
But
so
also, you know, Pardubice, Prague, the capital city, Belgium. So there are more of them, and to some extent also Karlovy Vary. So more and more regions are kind of joining, but the model is still the same. Teacher chooses, so no one risks anything. So I believe that's the best model you can have.
I think you answered the question quite nicely. Maybe Matt and Christina have something to add, or I can see Matt, that he's not in.
Yes, I just wanted to give the word to Christina as the lady's first approach.
So Christina.
Okay, I don't have much to add. I agree with what Jakub said, that teachers play an important role, but maybe just one point I would say that to consider cybersecurity while choosing these services, either it's done by the government or by the schools or teachers, is an important component. And as far as I'm informed, I'm not following it very closely, but also the services are changing a lot. So, you know, what the certain services are offering. So, yeah, that's also a problem because you have to follow the development here.
Yes, Matt.
Yeah, I also think that due to what Christina said about data privacy and data regulation, the government needs to set some sort of vision and some sort of regulation on how these things are, especially considering, for example, Hungary, where the teachers, especially between the pandemic, were heavily undereducated regarding digital skills. And meaning, even if they were to choose what kind of tools they want to choose, I mean, we were to hear about 10% of the teachers proving to work very well in the digital world, and we would see a widening scissor, and we would see a widening gap on that issue, especially. So if the free market were to set it, I think that the scissor would open even more. And if we were to give everything to government-funded programs, and then we would see an over-regulation and a very slow pace and an undeterminate decision-making process, which we don't really want. So I think we need to have somewhat between. We saw many examples in the startup world where innovation leads that make things fast and break things is an approach many people take. And I think that's also not very good, but we need to be user-driven. So the students at the very end need to be able to have the best or market incentivized tools at their hands. So the market needs to set that standard, but then there needs to be an overview and a regulation from the government.
Excellent, thank you. Gitis is nodding. Do you want to add something as a poser of the question?
Yeah, I'm really happy with the answer. Just a short remark that before the COVID, a lot of services were unavailable because there were no need for those services. And commercially, they were not sustainable, they were not viable for the schools, and that's why they were not provided. When we got the COVID, we faced the rapid growth of those demands for the services. And of course, there were a lot of players who were jumping in. They were not catching up with the demands. And that's where the universities came in. At least in Lithuania, we tried to help schools and provide it with the services they needed. So that's why I'm asking that, because if this now should be left for the open and free market, or universities or centrally supported services should still play an important role for the to support schools or after the COVID. So it's kind of tricky question, because it's in many cases the commercial services is not available yet. And I understand that providing those services from the university, we on another side also restricting possibility for commercial companies to compete and to provide with those services. So it's that's why I'm asking where to find the balance.
Well, thank you, Gittes, for your point of view and why you posed the question. And I would like to close with that, and maybe to add a note from my side that DigiKoalice, National Coalitions for Digital Skills and Jobs, are here to find the balance. So I hope we will succeed with this effort. So with that closing remark, I would like to thank you all for the panel. I really enjoyed it. It was very interesting for me to see your opinions on the subject, and thank you. And
Lucy, may I add something? It's Agnieszka Włodarczyk from Kraków Technology Park.
Hello.
Can I have, hello, only 5 minutes I will try to take you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and especially thanks to Zuzana. I'm part of the European Network of Living Lab, and it is my first time here, so I was listening to you with a very big interest to everything what you said. And my reflection is, because Kraków Technology Park is a leading tech park in Poland, we are one-stop shop for business operating in IT, ICT sector. We focus with big companies, small and medium enterprises, supporting them to deliver the product that meets the client's expectation. We are also the digital innovation hub. And under some projects, we developed a learning platform to support both students, technology transfer agent, as well as the people, as the young businesses that want to boost the digital transformation. And definitely that we are in a very unusual situation when not only education is taking place in hybrid way, so in real life and in digital, but for quite a long time we totally moved to the digital. And here I think that it really brings a huge challenge for the teachers and for the professor. And from my perspective, it's such organization, and as some of us represent as the technology park or the other business supporting organization.
Agnieszka, I'm terribly sorry.
Okay.
But I have to interrupt you because we are quite running late.
All right.
But you can continue in a breakout room.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. We have 4 breakout rooms, and one of them is focused on efficiency, which I think might be close to your topic.
Perfect.
So you can continue there. And thank you for your insights and for your work in European Digital Innovation Hub. So